welcome members of the Wonderverse. I'm Hannah.
And I'm producer Nick.
And you're listening to Into the Wonderverse, your one and only source into all things Scarlet Witch and friends. Let's get into it, shall we? It's been a week.
Has it?
I mean, did you or I not sit down the other day to record this and then watch Chairs for 3 hours?
Watch Chairs for 3? Oh, yes, we did. Yeah.
Well, I crashed out in the background.
Yeah, no, I remember. Yeah.
How did you feel watching Chairs?
I was watching Big Trouble in Little China, so at the same time as watching Chairs. So my experience was probably better than a lot of people's, than getting, a slight endorphin rush every 15 minutes.
15 minutes felt harsh. It could have been every 5. I feel like 15... Again, I actually enjoyed it as much as people have been roasting this announcement. It was an excellent marketing ploy. You cannot argue it worked, and they're going to do it again. They've told us... I saw... Did you see Downey's comment?
It was something like, this is the end of it or something.
This is such a big cast. I wonder if there's a second row of chairs or something.
Oh, okay.
But we knew that because, no Hulk or Renner felt off.
There's no Eternals. It feels really off.
If only there was an app that we could talk about the fact that Jeremy Renner's been announced for Avengers Doomsday yet. What would you say is your biggest surprise from those?
Oh, definitely Ian McKellen.
Really? McKellen's your biggest surprise?
McKellen was the biggest one because he's not done the Patrick Stewart thing where he popped in for Logan, then he popped up for the cameo in Multiverse of Madness. Ian McKellen's just been out completely since Days of Future Past.
Do you know that McKellen's casting was the thing that started to give me hope? Because
I saw your face.
Because Lizzie Olsen said that if her daddy came in, that she would come back. Was one of her. That's a plotline she said she's interested in. It's giving me so much hope for a retcon. This is for comics as well. Because we know that MCU synergy matters to character backstories in the MCU. I am exclusively hoping that
it would be interesting. It would be interesting if they did in Doomsday, where they were they started off and they're just young Avengers are trying, Wiccan's trying to find, basically Children's Crusade, and then Ian McKellen shows up and it's just well, I'm your grandfather. Let's go and find my daughter.
I see. The reason I also knew this cast wasn't done because there's no way that Monica isn't in this, and have I suddenly forgot Maria? There's no way Monica and Maria are in this when the Captain Marvel's end credit sequence has just become the most important end credit sequence of all time. So I'm not expecting Elizabeth Olsen to be announced for this movie. I think if she is in it, will be a post credits moment. I think the Young Avengers are going to spend the movie looking for her. Children's Crusade style. I think that, but I do think we'll see Captain Marvel, Monica Rambeau, Maria Rambeau, all back. Also, I would be stunned if Hulk and Renner aren't back. However, I have heard that Spider-Man 4 takes place during Doomsday, and that's why Holland isn't in Doomsday. I see your face.
I just... I'm exasperated.
I'm really sad to think. I would love to have seen we finally get a Johnny Storm and Spider-Man interaction, because I've really been enjoying in Rivals that they've built on that friendship.
Yeah, they're a great friendship in the comics.
I saw people being angry that there's a million cameos, and I think that if it's done right, it can work because it's very much an early 2000s thing for comic book characters to exist in singularity. They've been crossing over into each other's sphere. If you read any Avengers comic, it's basically just a mishmash of different properties.
They tried that in the comic and in the movies. They tried the whole singular kind of
they don't
thing,
exist.
and it just doesn't work.
Well, no, because then you're well, why wouldn't? Especially with Daredevil, Hell's Kitchen's a very small area.
It's because the reason is because movie and television media is a completely different. You take it in a different way than you would a book or a comic book. Plus, comic book readers have been attuned to reading these things in these certain ways.
Mm-hmm.
They examine them as in like, okay, I'm reading a 12-issue comic issue, 12-page comic issue.
Mm-hmm.
This is the chapter for this fortnight. In this 4-part, 6-part, storyline, the things, and oh look, who shows up for a couple of panels? It's Captain America. Yay. Like you can't do that. The equivalent to that is like, an episode of The Defenders on Netflix. And it's just like, why isn't Spider-Man showing up? He's in New York. Like,
I just think that we need to find a way, and I do think the MCU was doing it relatively well in phase 2 and 3.
It's because they were leading up to Endgame, and after Endgame was finished, they were like, right, we're gonna do the multiverse saga, which was, I don't know, they've completely botched this post Endgame era, in my opinion.
Well, I think that they've lost. My biggest take is they've lost the art of an origin story, which we still do need. I think Miss Marvel was a return to form, actually, yes, in terms of origin story. Moon Knight was... They didn't quite... I wish that Moon Knight had 2 more episodes to stick that. I think that some of the Disney Plus shows are good origin stories. I think that the movies have gone too hard into... The Eternals is the biggest example of that, in that should have been... There should have been 2 Eternals... That was 2 Eternals movies in one. And I'm hoping that the Fantastic Four will be a return to, we establish this dynamic. I'm quite glad that they're doing it post their powers, because we've got 2 movies already, obviously with different casts that are establishing their powers, but we're talking about what their team dynamic is. I mean,
it's this thing, like, they did it with Spider-Man Homecoming, where they were like, right, we're not going to do another origin movie because like everybody knows how Peter Parker got his powers. We don't need to go over that again. And like the Fantastic Four, everybody kind of knows. Like, I mean, there've been 3 movies, 4 including Roger Corman. Like,
also, this is a slightly older cast.
Yeah,
and so it makes sense. Obviously, I mean, I'm gonna I guess maybe skip this section if you want to go into Fantastic Four blind, and I'll say when the spoiler territory is finished. We'll put it in the description.
Sure.
But obviously Sue's pregnant.
Yeah, obviously.
And so I think this is a different kind of origin story in that sense. It's an origin of the next stage of that dynamic. Do you know what I mean?
I think we'll see their origin in a way that is...
They are obviously going to show parts of it, because we see in the trailer it's got them going to space, but it's going to be more flashbacks.
Can I go into theory?
Go for it. Yeah.
My theory is, so in Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness, which is a movie that none of us have any takes on in this podcast.
You so close to having coffee like spat in your face.
Yeah, so that movie, like, Jim from The Office shows up, and Doctor Strange is like, oh, Fantastic Four, I thought you guys charted in the 60s.
Yeah,
So my theory is, and we've seen this theory do the rounds, and and I think the fact that it's kind of stuck around is because, like, there's been reports and, set reports on this kind of stuff.
And we know it's a retro.
It's gonna be they go off from 616 Marvel MCU, prime timeline. They go off and they get taken into another multiverse. And during that multiversal journey is where they kind of gain their powers. Then Pedro Pascal is like, we need to go back because Galactus is coming. I think that movie ends with Galactus destroying that universe and that planet, and then ends with them coming over to thing and being like doing the whole Galactus is coming.
I do really, really end of Fantastic Four talk, because I'm going to talk about the X-Men now.
Yeah.
So
start of X-Men. No, so spoilers over for Fantastic Four. Spoilers now for X-Men 1 from the year 2000.
I do hope this is this version of the X-Men's goddamn swan song, because
they've had 3 of them. 3
also,
swan songs.
I'm sorry, love Ian McKellen. Literally, like, obviously love Ian McKellen, love Patrick Stewart. They are like,
they're old.
They're old. And also, like, I'm so worried about Alan Cummings in the Nightcrawler get up.
He's getting on with it.
He's 60.
I mean, at the end of the day, it's the Deadpool thing, and it's like till you're 90. I mean,
literally, Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen are doing
nearly 90. But like they've had 3 swan songs, haven't they? It was like The Last Stand, was a swan song for a few of them. And then it was Days of Future Past was a swan song for a few of them. And then Logan was a swan song for Hugh Jackman.
And also
for Patrick Stewart.
And then Patrick Stewart was back in Multiverse of Madness. We like, I feel like they're not gonna fully let go of Hugh Jackman's Wolverine, but we have heard they're casting for a new set of X-Men. And that makes me happy because I love the X-Men and I think it is time for a new take. I do feel like, obviously I love, again,
they need to be in their classic uniforms.
X-Men First Class is one of my favorite Marvel movies of all time. I watch it all the time. I think Fassbender and McAvoy, I would have rather kind of seen them back just because I feel like they've had less fucking swan songs at this point. Yeah. Because they're older now, so they can carry on. I don't think Fassbender would do it. I don't think he'll go back. I saw McAvoy saying he would.
McAvoy would. McAvoy's always down for that kind of thing, but he was in Wanted, for crying out loud. But McAvoy's always up for this stuff. Fassbender,
we know that Jennifer Lawrence is never getting back into that blue paint ever.
She's so happy,
and they always say that they won't come back without each other as a thing. That they'd have to go back as a group. And Holt's DC now. So.
Holt is too big.
And I don't think anyone wants to, there's some I worry that we're going to see Evan Peters in this movie. And Peter, we need Pietro. I'm sorry. I do hope that we find a way to bring Pietro back to the MCU because he was killed off so far before his time in the MCU. Yeah. The one person who stays out in the MCU is the person whose character they least explored, to be honest. Him and poor Maria Hill.
Kobe Smulders.
But I'm cautiously optimistic about the direction of this. There are choices that I would not have made, but I am not in control of this.
And we've already got over the downy of it all.
We're just know that our opinion remains the same. I think is the way that we're
still not the same.
We are exactly where we were the last time you. We don't need to go over it again.
No.
It would be like me saying I don't like House of M.
No, we've an opinion that nobody's ever heard before. I think so. The next up is Thunderbolts.
Yes, very, very excited for it. I am so seated. Every trailer gets me more excited for this team.
Are we reviewing it?
I think so because I love it. I'm a huge Yelena and Bucky stan.
We'll do a review.
We'll go see it on opening day, and
if I can,
I'll make you. It's fine. Okay. Amy Lee will come. She likes Yelena so much too. That's for context. My best friend, his wife to be. The wedding of the century, if you will.
I'm just letting that dead air go.
I don't care. Right. I don't care. To me, it is. That's my rotten soldier. That's my.
Okay. So Thunderbolts May 6th, and then it's Fantastic Four in July.
Let us know how interested you are in us talking about other Marvel content because we're happy to cover it. But obviously, what we do depends on you guys' feedback, and we'll talk about what you want us to talk about.
Yeah, because the general idea is obviously our main feature of the week is we do Wonder stuff. This week,
and Agatha,
if anything comes up, and then kind of news is kind of us going over just general kind of Wonder news, but also general kind of Marvel news, because at the end of the day, she is a part of Marvel, and
the direction of the universe matters.
The direction of the MCU directly corresponds with how what's going to happen with Elizabeth Olsen and what happens with Wanda. So, at the end of the day, we will have a chat about these kind of projects as and when. If you don't want us to talk about Doomsday ever again, let us know. If you do want us to talk about Doomsday, then we will.
I guess from your comments on my TikTok that you do, because I get the same.
You get the same
comments a lot. But also, Catherine was at Haley Fest. There was a big Agatha reunion. Everybody seemed happy. We got confirmation that Nick is Rio and Agatha's child. That is, they actually did cast based on that. That is their kid. Which we all kind of guessed, but
okay.
There's no way Agatha was shacking up with a dude.
Just death.
Yeah, I mean, I guess death's kind of genderless if you want to take it that way. But it seemed like that team is very enthused about whatever is coming next. And Catherine said she wants a rematch with the Scarlet Witch versus Agatha, and also Agatha versus Strange, which has created an entire debate online, which I will not be engaging in, and I'll explain why in a minute, about whether or not Agatha could absorb Doctor Strange's magic or not. We are going to say it here and clear on this podcast. We do not do power scaling because it is a pointless
It's absolutely pointless
exercise. Whoever writes it will be able to decide what powers Agatha can or cannot absorb.
It's like the Batman v Superman debates going around. It's
with
just like,
of course,
of course. Like Superman in any universe will be able to beat Batman, but Batman is smart. Like it's the same application are provided to every single Marvel character, every single comic book character. We do not care if you think Homelander will beat Scarlet Witch in a fight. Like, it doesn't fucking matter.
Obviously, if I was writing it, Wanda's gonna beat his ass. But, like, if I wasn't writing it, then obviously if a Homelander stan is writing it, then Homelander's gonna win, because, you know what? Everything is subjective. Otherwise, Iron Man would never win a fight with Thanos.
I'm gonna end this kind of segment with a quote from a really good movie, which I think is Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back. And in this movie, Jay and Silent Bob go and visit Holden McNeil, played by Ben Affleck, and they start talking about the fact that their comic book character likeness is being used online, or being used for a movie, and they're really, really angry about the fact that all these internet nerds are complaining about them. So Ben Affleck just looks at them and says, "You're complaining about fictional characters," and he does this thing with his hand, right? Fictional characters. As in, it doesn't matter. These are fictional characters. I love Spider-Man. Hannah loves Wanda. I'm sure there are plenty of people out there that love other comic book characters. These are characters that we love. But at the end of the day, these are fictional characters. They're not gonna change life or death in the grand scheme of things. So power scaling, we're not doing it.
This is not the podcast for that. Go elsewhere if you're into that. But who did I just mention, Nick? Just a few seconds ago. He's over there on the wall.
Iron Man?
Yeah, because what are we talking about this week?
Iron Man?
We're talking about the 1994 Iron Man, the animated series, which featured Wanda. It was her first animated appearance since she popped up in the 60s. We'll do an episode on that eventually, but Nick hasn't.
We did an episode.
I did an episode on that.
You did an episode on that.
You haven't watched it, and
I did watch it. I did watch the sword. We watched the Swordsman. You maybe watched the Swordsman episode, and this was like episode 2 or 3. I think we did. We'll probably have to redo it because I didn't really talk. This was
it was all scripted back in those days. Back in the olden days of last year, I used to script the entire podcast and just sit and read it like, and then when you and
I had duct tape over my mouth.
And when? Yeah, that's how it used to be. Whereas this is a bit more natural, a bit more fun.
Yeah.
Summertime, something for girls.
So I need to ask, what's your relationship with this Iron Man 94 cartoon and the other cartoons of the era? We're talking the 90s Fox Kids era.
I was not born when this aired.
Yeah.
I did not see this until till 2 years, like when I first started kind of really getting into it. I made a video. There's a video on my account about this cartoon that I made when I used to script on my TikTok as well. And it's also giving when is very. I think actually Amy Lee might have done the audio for that. That's how, like, I thought I didn't have a good speaking voice. Now I have a fucking podcast.
You have a podcast?
Yeah. So I watched this like a few years ago. I was fascinated, interested in, and I didn't watch any of the 90s cartoons when they were airing. I grew up on the later era of animation. Again, I was very much a Batman cartoon kid as I was growing up. That was what was on. Like, again, my parents didn't have Sky, so I only watched what was on like CBBC and what's it called? The BBC.
CITV?
Yeah. And what's the BBC version for kids?
CBBC was BBC.
Yeah, so
CITV
and
was the
five
milkshake.
Toonatic. I used to watch Toonatic. Yeah, so
Toonami? No, that was Cartoon Network.
Yeah. Toonatic was on Channel 3, but it was like their Saturday
ITV,
morning. Yeah. So I didn't grow up on. X-Men and the Wolverine was one of my first big interest in Marvel cartoons. I saw some of the old X-Men cartoon, the we'll talk about that in a later episode, where Wanda has the huge hair. But this was brand new to me. You grew up on the Spider-Man, which was a part of the Marvel Action Hour in the 90s.
So this was Marvel. It's called the Marvel Action Hour in America. This is kind of like just a starting off really as an introduction to the era of cartoons. So Saturday morning cartoons is really what it kind of was. So I grew up on the Spider-Man animated cartoon, Spider-Man 94. Which had the kick-ass theme song by Joe Perry from Aerosmith. That's the one I grew up on, and in an episode of that in season 5, they do a version of Secret Wars, and he basically has to choose like 5 heroes to help him, and he chooses Captain America, Iron Man, Storm, and I can't remember who else he chooses. Anyway, besides the point. Anyway, so. And War Machine, Iron Man and War Machine, both of them show up. So like, it's a case of I'm aware of Iron Man, the 90s version of Iron Man. It was always kind of framed to me as the worst of the lot, because there was also the Incredible Hulk 90s cartoon. And there was the Fantastic Four one, which I've not seen. There was like the Silver Surfer one, which was like a spin-off of the Fantastic Four. I didn't even know that
existed.
But the Spider-Man one was the one that I grew up on, and that one is incredibly story focused, and it's incredibly, I'm going to say this word again, focused, okay, and it's very, very focused, and knows exactly what it's doing, which leads me into talking about Iron Man 94 and how unfocused. So we're talking about the first 6 episodes of season 1, so which are on Disney Plus.
Just to give you a little bit of kind of setup before we start talking about this. The Iron Man series is kind of, as well as we're talking about the first 6 episodes, but it's worth noting that the second season has an entirely different tone to the first one. You've not seen any of that yet. But the first season makes some really interesting choices. So it centers around Iron Man, and the main foe he's going up against is the Mandarin, and his mission to like steal Iron Man's technology and take him down. And he has a massive army of like backup guards, which include Dread Knight, Blizzard, Backlash, the Grey Gargoyle, Living Laser, MODOK, Fing Fang Foom, Justin Hammer, and Hypnosha, who is an original character made for the cartoon.
So the only ones I ever heard of before watching this were MODOK, Justin Hammer, and Fing Fang Foom, and obviously the Mandarin. But the thing is, like, no idea these characters, the villains, who will show up in the intro sequence, which is really weird.
Mm-hmm. They list off a lot of those characters. Not everybody from there. Fing Fang Foom, despite being an icon, is not in the opening sequence. But what you need to know is, if you are looking for backstory from this cartoon,
not gonna get it.
They introduce these. Literally, the Mandarin is like, "Hey, Blizzard." Just go and do a blizzard. And you're like, wait, are you going to explain how he got his power set, anything about him? Nope. No.
It's like the first episode, like, Mandarin, like, does this thing, like, Hypnosha does this thing.
You go straight into
and then,
it
like,
as well.
And then it cuts to, like, a year later, and he's like, oh, it's not like it's not like the Mandarin just to leave something like this. It's just,
who is the Mandarin, bro?
Who is the Mandarin, guys?
And even funnier is that we have a huge team of heroes supporting Iron Man. Not only do we not get an Iron Man backstory, like there's no even like flashback to how he got his powers. The first episode is like you are 3 seasons in to this entire thing, and we're not even told Iron Man is supported by the ForceWorks team, who later had a comic run about them. Totally different lineup as well, which is funny.
Totally different lineup.
The ForceWorks include Sentry, War Machine, Scarlet Witch, Hawkeye, and Julia Carpenter's Spider-Woman.
So that's Sentry as in CENTRY.
Yeah, not as in the one in...
Not Sentry, who is going to be in Thunderbolts. This is a completely different Sentry.
And this is a mad lineup of massively powerful people between the Scarlet Witch and Sentry.
And Sentry alone.
Yeah, they are so overpowered to be on this squad and yet squandered completely.
What is quite funny is that, because I had to look up who Sentry was, because I had the initial thought of being like, wait, did he see Sentry? Did he mean the character that's showing? Is this like a retcon that they did in the early 2000s? No, this is a character that was made after the events of issue 1 of the Scarlet Witch comic that we covered from 1994, where he is apparently the amalgamation of all the dead souls from the planet that Lore destroyed in that first issue.
Yes, he was created to help defeat Lore. When Wanda called all those spirits forward, they create Sentry, and he fights with a staff called Parallax, which binds his multiple personalities into a unified self, and he is able to basically control time and space vaguely.
It's so there's the how are we going to do this? Are we just going to talk about like the episode by episode? We're just going to talk about the kind of whole, because there's no.
I think that we're going to have to go into. There's no coherent overriding storyline. This is something that you have to know. This is not a story based. This is a very much villain of the week, but it's not. It's the same team of villains, but it's like problem of the week is, I guess, how you would.
Scheme of the week.
There is absolutely no backstory to who Tony Stark is. And there is no establishing to any of them except randomly halfway through MODOK gets like a backstory.
Yeah, MODOK shows up.
So we're going to talk about it, I guess, episode by episode. We're going to cover the first 6 episodes on this episode, and then in our next one, we'll go into the next 6 episodes. 6
episodes, and then we'll do season 2 separate.
Okay.
As a whole thing.
Yes. So the very first episode is called "And the Sea Shall Give Up Its Dead." And the episode summary is just the Mandarin uses a zombified submarine crew against Iron Man. But I have to tell you that that is a very, very, summarized. So we are introduced to Tony Stark immediately. Well, actually, first we start with the villains. And basically, Hypnotia, who, again, I could not tell you her power set. I had just watched the episode. Because she hypnotizes people. I don't know what the limits on that are, who she is, or where she came from, but she has a vaguely Eastern European accent. That is important to her character, I guess. She comes onto a submarine, she entrances the crew of the submarine, and then they place some sort of living possession goop that will activate in a year to create an army of zombies from this Russian crew, is the idea. And Justin Hammer has built a tunnel between the UK and Belgium in order to facilitate these zombies coming out of the sea. Justin Hammer, I want to say, is British in this, but is a citizen of the United States.
That's fine. There's a South African
don't
that's a citizen of the United States at the moment, so
okay. Anyway, and basically the Mandarin is like, yeah, I'm gonna use this to conquer the world. Here's my entire squad team. Tony Stark's main personality in this, no one knows he's Iron Man. It is unclear if his teammates, all of them know he is Iron Man, because he speaks in second, he'll be like, Iron Man will go, or I'll go and tell Iron. It's hard to tell. I assume they know because he is not subtle and they're in the secret lair of hundreds of Iron Man suits. But it's not established who knows and who doesn't know, but the world does not know Tony Stark as Iron Man, which was common at this point. The 2008 comic very much did something different. Not comic, live action, in terms of...
he was a C-list hero.
Sometimes, the Avengers don't even know that Tony Stark and Iron Man are the same person. It really depends on the media. Steve has this whole thing sometimes where he's like, I hate the Tony Stark, but Iron Man is my biffle. And so on and so forth. So basically, Iron Man goes to investigate this underwater. He'll have this whole team, which includes Wanda, who has her probability manipulating hex power in this, which just kind of goes to she does whatever she wants. They do, again, the skill set is very thinly defined. Jennifer Carpenter's Spider-Woman, if you knew about Spider-Man and what his power set was and you were introduced to Spider-Woman, she's creating things from thin air with lasers. So, if you were familiar with regular Spider-Man and you'd never met Spider-Woman in your life, you'd be like, what? Since when can Spider-Man do that? So this first episode, basically Tony rejects all help, goes underwater to investigate this submarine, and gets, in trouble. Long story short, the zombified crew get free, and Tony and the Force Works team show up to stop them. And we have Wanda saying her first line of dialogue, which is, you shouldn't oppress my pumpkins, especially not your friends. And she turns herself into one of the zombies.
Yes, she does.
Before, whacking them. She's just creating, boulders and stuff out of nowhere. She has this accent that I'm and calls everybody pumpkins is one of her big things in this. She's also Wanda Frank rather than Maximoff because they didn't want to have to deal with any kind of X-Men crossover.
Because at this point, wasn't she known as Wanda Frank?
No, that's not, like, we got rid of that way back. She's been Maximoff for a long time by this point. I think they just didn't want to have to deal with the idea of Pietro or Magneto.
Or the X-Men cartoon.
Yeah. So I think that's why. I don't have confirmation on that, but I'm guessing that's why they did what they did here. She has the same outfit that she wears in the 1994 run. And what is hilarious is when the team come to help Tony underwater, she, like, instead of them having kind of any underwater suits, they're in their regular costumes, except they just have bubbles on their head. So Wanda is in these, like, little gloves and boots and, like, titties out, like, under the water.
And in a bubble.
Yeah. And, like, she only really has 2 lines in the whole episode. You don't know a thing about who she is or where she came from, or the fact that her name is, like, do they say her name at any point in the first episode? I feel like they don't. I feel like they don't say her name. Again, none of the heroes are introduced in the opening sequence except War Machine. Something very important to note as well is Iron Man's transformation sequence. Is that the rest of the cartoon is 2D animation, but there was this groundbreaking technology
called CGI.
They were like, you know what? Mid-transformation sequence, we should just seamlessly transition from 2D animation to 3D animation, and it is truly awful, I would say.
It's 90s anime. It's 90s CGI. So this is an Avi, basically it's an Avi Arad production. Avi Arad kind of ran Toy Biz at this time in the 90s and was responsible for the media kind of the media of these Marvel characters. Avi Arad's name still pops up to this day on Spider-Man productions. So, look out for that next time you watch a Spider-Man movie. Now,
one of the main writers on this was also responsible for the Transformers cartoon. Yeah. He's largely beloved, Ron Friedman.
Well, the Transformers cartoon was long gone at this point.
Yeah, but he was responsible for it.
So, like...
He's a good... That's the thing. It's interesting that so many people who are talented came together to make whatever this
I don't consider Avi Arad to be talented. I just consider him to be a producer with lots of money. No, it basically is what he is. He's a businessman. He doesn't have any talent. He's just able to just do business, and that's what he was able to do. So he was very much responsible for what became known as toyetic, which is how do you make toys out of this?
But interestingly enough, though, despite all of these characters, very few figures were made of the heroes from this series. There is no, I think there's a War Machine figure and an Iron Man, and many Iron Man suits. Yeah. But Wanda didn't get a figure, Julia Carpenter didn't get a figure.
The intention would have been to basically produce toys, and that would have been largely dependent on the kind of reception of the cartoon.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the Spider-Man cartoon and the X-Men cartoon were very, very popular. They got a lot of toys in the 90s. They got a lot of tie-ins with stuff, places like Burger King, for example. I'm assuming the Iron Man cartoon didn't.
There's lots of cups. I would die. One of my most wanted items is there's the Force Works cups that has Wanda on. I think it was Burger King that did a series of cups based on the Marvel Action Hour. A lot of fuss was made when it was launched, the Marvel Action Hour as a whole. A lot of merch. It's a weird amount of people together. It looks like Secret Wars because it has a Fantastic Four and Spider-Man and Iron Man all together on this merchandise. Not so much the X-Men, more the other properties that I think they were having more trouble shifting. But you can see why they were trying to sell toys, but it's interesting because there actually weren't that many toys made for this particular series. We got Iron Man and you got War Machine. No Fin Fang Foom. He's my favorite villain, the dragon. I love him. He appears in this first episode for a hot second. They're like, no, not Fin Fang Foom. And then Century just, again, there's a part at the end of this cartoon that is absolutely baffling, whereby they've defeated them, but Century's like, wait, these men are innocent. They don't deserve to be zombies. And then he just makes them human again. Like, that wasn't a solution. Why wasn't that a solution at the beginning of the episode, is what I'm asking. Why did Tony Stark need to go underwater when we could have just sent Century to bring them back? Bring me alive. You know? Like... Again, it is a massively overstacked team. I like the variety of villains that they've brought in here. Again, the bones of the idea are good. The execution is interesting.
The execution is poor, and I say that with... I don't know, with a heavy heart. Yeah, it is a heavy heart, because at the end of the day, like, these 90s cartoons were incredibly popular.
It's a real shame, especially, I'm going to go into it a little bit, the use of the female characters is a shame. We have Julia and Wanda, who are pitted against each other completely. They hate each other.
Yes, this weird love triangle
between, and Iron Man
love square, shall I say?
Because he has that other physical therapist.
The physical
no
therapist.
Pepper Potts are happy in this series.
Yeah,
just this random physical therapist. In the first episode, a weird amount of people in like women in bikinis for a kids cartoon, like. Jugs out, buns out in this.
Well, boys cartoon.
I'm sorry, but like, still, I wouldn't want my son watching he was like 4, watching this many women in bikinis.
It was the 90s. It was a wild time. As somebody grew up in the 90s.
I mean, I was born in 95, but like, I wouldn't have been surprised if Felicia Hardy showed up for no reason because of the tone of this cartoon.
She shows up in the Spider-Man cartoon.
Of course she does.
Her a little sidebar here. Her backstory in the Spider-Man cartoon is wild. She is a cat thief.
Mm-hmm.
Like, her dad was also a cat thief, but she was given Captain America's super soldier serum, and that's how she got her power set.
Okay, I mean, that's Natasha's power set, basically. Natasha in the cartoon in the comics has super soldier serum. Yeah, which makes her like, they should have done that in the MCU, because otherwise, why was Natasha just like?
I mean, why was there a guy with a bow and arrow as well?
Don't. Clint in this, though, Clint's bike can fly.
Yeah.
The vehicles are very much set here to sell toys. We've got this hovercraft that Julia...
Toyetic. It's the thing.
Julia and Wanda are often in, because they're girlies. Whereas Wanda should be able to fly, but that's never introduced. And then Hawkeye has a flying bike that, you know, is... This was made for Burger King. So in the second episode, we basically, the Mandarin and Justin Hammer and MODOK, they're kind of, well, MODOK and the Mandarin, I guess, are your big bads somehow. I guess they're the most recognizable characters. The Iron Man's rogue gallery.
Yep.
Again, I don't really remember any of the other bitches.
I mean, Mandarin is not...
One thing that we're gonna have to do on this podcast is talk about historical racism, because compared with the 60s cartoon, and this is a long period after, the Mandarin is distinctly less racist.
Yeah, so the Mandarin basically was Stan Lee's attempt at doing Fu Manchu. Now, Fu Manchu, for those that don't know, her younger listeners, it was a character created to basically be a stereotype on the whole Chinese mysticism. And so, you know, Christopher Lee, as in the guy that played Saruman, actually played Fu Manchu in 1930s serials. In, you know, brown face, very, very troubling, you know, not brown face, yellow faces, what they call it. Incredibly troubling and racist. And there was a big worry when it came to talking about Iron Man when they announced his movie, who was going to play the Mandarin. And it was then Iron Man 3 had the bait and switch, where, you know, it was Ben Kingsley, which was great casting, by the way. If you're going to do the Mandarin, it was going to be Ben Kingsley. And then it was the bait and switch of, oh no, look, it's Guy Pearce. And then he turned out to be the Mandarin, but then you get the Hail to the King short, which revealed that the Mandarin was actually real and not this kind of amalgamation of stories.
A very good job done in Shang-Chi.
And then they cast perhaps the greatest living actor in movies, Tony Leung. I mean, have you seen In the Mood for Love?
No.
I recommend In the Mood for Love. Him and Maggie Cheung, two of the hottest actors ever to live, doing a love story.
Okay.
Now, Tony Leung was incredible casting as Shang-Chi, in Shang-Chi as the Mandarin, and they was able to kind of frame the Mandarin, away from this kind of racism that is very inherent in the character. Now, the 90s cartoon kind of
it's not
almost does it.
I hadn't remembered. Again, I watched the whole thing through in like 2 weeks the first time I watched it, and then rewatched Wanda's lines so that I could make videos on it. Like, compared with the 60s cartoon, which again, it's much less. He's kind of a goblin. So I wouldn't say he looks in any way Chinese really in this. The rings are...
He's not Chinese. He's meant to be stereotypically Asian. This is Asian kind of stereotype. So it's all basically about the mysticism. So it's not specifically Chinese.
In the 60s cartoon it is. It's very much communist. I mean, again, we're in the cold. That's very much the Cold War era, the 60s cartoon.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're gonna give it less racism points than... There's still some weird scenes in where like MODOK tries to bomb what is basically a Tibetan village. But again, there's some weird... The women's role in this is bad. We're giving it a misogyny rating of high and a racism rating of mid, I guess. But again, to be fair, they show the Russians as people. I was actually surprised when they let the Russians go back to being people.
Well, that's because this is 94.
I guess this is cold. Has the Berlin Wall fallen?
All the fall. Yeah,
this is 91. Yeah,
this is the era of peace and prosperity in the 90s.
I know. If this was in the 80s, they would have.
No, they would have been totally G.I. Joe in it, but no, this was 94, 96. This was Bill Clinton era. This is...
Well, Bill Clinton is in this.
Bill Clinton is in this. I know he mentioned his name. He is legitimately in this. With the accent and everything. A voice actor doing Bill Clinton and everything.
But, talking about Wanda's role kind of more specifically, she is we don't know where she's from. We don't know what her... Tony talks about her hex sense. She is an Eastern European of some descript.
Yeah.
Voiced in the first season by to get it right this time. It's Catherine Moffat in the first season and Jennifer Darling in the second, I want to say.
I've got Rachel Carpenter in the second.
Nope.
No?
I don't think so.
No, it is Jennifer Darling. You're all right.
Yeah. With cartoons, for some reason, the attribution of voice acting is sometimes really poor online.
Yeah.
But she wants to be with Tony romantically. He has no interest in kind of any women really.
He's only interested in Rhodes.
Yeah. Who they called Jim rather than Rhodey in this, which again, I know that's his name, but I don't like it. I don't like when they're like, Jim, where are you, Jim? Instead of I'm like, why not Rhodes or Rhodey? Upsets me.
So the second episode is this episode called Rejoice, I Am Ultimo, Thy Deliverer, where the Mandarin accidentally releases a giant robot wishing to destroy all life. Weird episode.
Very weird.
MODOK is in this episode for the first time. It's very weird.
Yeah, it's an odd episode. I mean, none of them are not odd. Let's be real.
Okay.
Every plot line sounds like it needs to go through several filters.
Episode 3 is called Data In, Chaos Out. When Mandarin makes plans to crash the stock market, MODOK uses an invention of mind control war machine.
And then in the fourth one,
it's called Silence, My Companion, Death, My Destination. And
then in one of the weirdest episodes 4 has Julia Carpenter's one of her big storylines in the comic is that she's a mother. Could she give a shit about her child in this episode?
No, apparently not.
Rachel Carpenter gets kidnapped, basically, and Tony is sent, and then Julia just kind of standing there oh. And when Rachel's rescued, do we get a scene of her and her mother reuniting? No. women, like, it's not just women though, like any member of the Force Works team other than maybe Rhodes. Hawkeye has more of his comic personality than maybe a lot of other animations that he's in. This is a good version of Hawkeye. If you're a Hawkeye fan, I guess you like this, but they're all very much just kind of standing in the background. Honestly, the villains get a lot more screen time than the Force Works team. I think I cannot really fathom why most of them weren't included in the cartoon, because they do not want to waste any, they're not spending any time on it.
Episode 5 is called The Grim Reaper Wears a Teflon Coat. Mandarin steals an experimental military plane, which yeah.
That's the one where Wanda throws a tantrum and is in a bikini for most of the episode.
She disappears and then gets persuaded to come back.
Basically, she's mad because Tony took Julia to like whatever meeting he was at, and she's like, I didn't ask you.
Yeah.
I'm sure Julia is a wonderful traveling companion.
You would think
I'd rather be with you, Tony dear.
You would think Hannah's impersonation would be, an exaggeration. No,
Julia.
That's pretty much it.
So she goes off, and then she spends like the rest of the episode for no reason at all in a very revealing bikini. So It's a baffling side plot where we're trying to introduce this love triangle without explaining who any of the people in this love triangle are. Again, I'm not just saying the women don't have backstories. Tony doesn't have a backstory. We have no or they'll introduce plot really randomly where they'll be like, there's shrapnel in his spine. If he keeps going so hard, then he's gonna die. How'd he get the shrapnel in his spine? They don't know. We don't know.
Episode 6 is called Enemy Without Enemy Within. Mandarin's forces ambush Forceworks near a photography shoot on the beach. So why is MODOK going to Iron Man for help? So this is strange because in episode 6 of this series we get MODOK's backstory. Yeah. And I think probably a better version of MODOK than Quantum Mania, but that's not hard.
No, it was honestly MODOK is this is a really good backstory.
It's a really good MODOK.
So, this is maybe one of the better episodes.
It's the better one out of the 6
because we suddenly get this backstory and a female character has agency, though she is in a bikini.
Yeah, she's in a bikini,
and it shows kind of what this series could have maybe been if it feels like every episode was the treatment for an episode and was never edited. It was a absolute first draft.
This is so this episode 6 is the closest episode to, again, the Spider-Man animated cartoon from the 90s as well, where that treats these like villains and gives you backstory of the villains and gives you emotional reasons why we should care about these characters, which is, something that kids don't really care about. But at the end of the day, like, they might like a character more if they've got an interesting backstory. I know I did at the age of like 10 or 11.
Yeah, there are some episodes later on this season that technically follow on from each other. Also, the episodes are shown out of order for some reason later on in the season. So the second half of the season tried, I guess, to be more story focused. We'll talk about that next week. We will get into it. What are your thoughts on the first half of the first season?
Again, like first 5 episodes, I was a bit like, okay, this is just pretty standard 90s Saturday morning cartoon fare where they really don't care about the intelligence of children for tracking stories.
And you don't need to have seen any other episode at all because there was no information given about any of these people.
Yeah. Episode 6 was the first one where I was like, oh no, hang on, they're actually doing the thing that I came to love in like I said, in its contemporary Spider-Man cartoon. So.
Again, if you're a MODOK fan, head to this episode because it is a good episode of television for MODOK fans exclusively. There is an interesting group of characters here. They are just being utilized poorly.
I think what's quite interesting for us though is because we're in the podcast at the moment. We're in the 90s era. Mm-hmm. Like we've just covered the 90s comic. And we're very much going to be going through the intention is to go through very much the 90s era of the cartoon shows.
Because we were both born in the 90s.
Because we were both born in the 90s. Old. And I think what's interesting is that we get these 4 issues where Scarlet Witch is very much becoming her own character and her own agency. and very, very strong and independent and away from the Avengers, away from the X-Men in this 4-issue run that both me and Hannah really like a lot.
Yeah, I love.
And yet we go into the same year, it's kind of revealed that, you know, we get this kind of...
Well, it's not, she's not Wanda at all. This is not... No. This version of Wanda, I would say, is nothing like the Wanda... Any Wanda Maximoff from the comics. You know, she has never been... Yeah, she's been relationship driven, but she's never been petty, especially towards other women. She is a part of the very first woke Marvel comic, which we have never talked about, but I'm just going to reference briefly. There's this episode where Valkyrie comes in and has the women take over the Avengers, and it's played like women shouldn't actually do this at the end.
What show is this?
I think it's the 80s that this happened, maybe the 70s.
Okay.
It's Valkyrie's on the cover, doing like a women's.
Yeah.
We'll definitely cover it. It's a great issue, except the ending where they were like, feminism is bad, basically, at the end.
Women stay in the kitchen.
Not quite, but a little bit. They're like, we won't do that again. But Wanda has always been a girl's girl. Kind of throughout the comics, she's always, her and Janet have had a strong friendship. She's one of the only people that believed in Carol.
Sorry. Janet and Wanda have had a friendship? Because in the issues that I've read, you wouldn't bloody believe it.
In the early issues, they do.
Okay, cool.
In the 90s, obviously, well, Janet goes through this era where she's a kind of cunty, but slay queen cunty, where she'll be like, your boots suck. That's how Janet shows love.
Okay.
And obviously in House of M, she's just again, House of M is very and Disassembled are very negative towards the Avengers in general. But Wanda's never been this catty, I hate woman. I don't know Wanda Frank. This bitch is not my Wanda Maximoff. Not my Wanda. But if you're a Wanda fan, this cartoon isn't great. I wouldn't be clamoring for a Hasbro figure for her. Recently, they brought out some Hasbro figures for this cartoon.
Well, they've done a load for the Spider-Man animated cartoon. No, they did a load for the Fantastic Four as well. I've seen a few for the Iron Man, as in the actual Iron Man suit, but I've not seen any for Wanda. So I don't know.
No, they didn't bring. Again, I don't think anyone wants to remember this version of Wanda. It wasn't fun. I'd be much more interested in Avengers United They Stand. I'll get onto my beef with that toy making when we get to Avengers United They Stand. And I think we're going to see Wanda in animation again soon when we finally get season 2 of X-Men 97.
97. So I think just to kind of wrap up, I think just to let you know our kind of intentions here, so you can kind of watch these cartoons maybe ahead of time of us. So next episode and the episode after are very much going to focus on the Iron Man cartoon. So we're going to do part 2 of season 1. So the rest of season 1 next episode. Then we'll do a whole of season 2 the following episode because Wanda's not in that season very much. And then we're going to move on to Avengers United We Stand, which is 26.
No, we're going to do X-Men 97, her 1 episode first.
Okay, so we're going to do the 1 episode of X-Men, and then we'll talk about Avengers United We Stand, which will probably be across two parts.
I think we'll break that down more by episode because she has a massive story.
Sure.
Nick's never seen it before. Nick is experiencing a lot of this for the first time. If you want us, give us feedback. If you would prefer that we broke down every single episode of Iron Man 1994, we can do a watch along. We can break down every painful line from this. I just didn't know how deep you guys would want us to go, but tell us what you want.
If you want us to do commentaries, that is something we've been throwing around as an idea for you guys as bonus content. I don't know, we would maybe do a 50 pence Patreon or something for it. But that is something we are throwing around as an idea. If you want us to do that for the mainline MCU series and also for these cartoons, just let us know and we will do that. We're happy to provide if you guys want it.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you want more information on these, I have a video somewhere which is Wanda's best lines ranked from this show. At the end of this, I will do my impression of all of her best lines, and you guys are our precious pumpkins because that is genuinely something that she said. My precious pumpkins. The accent is so interesting. It was such a choice. Okay. But thank you for being with us this week. It's been I love this episode. I love making Nick watch media. It's my favorite thing. Nick's fashion advice will be back really soon. Don't worry. I'm going to make Nick break down Wanda's costumes, the outfits, each one. He's going to love it. He's smiling. He's so happy right now. We'll be back next week. But if you can't wait that long because you just love us so much, you can find me over at Into the Wonderverse on TikTok, The Wonderverse on Instagram, Threads, The Dark Place, e.g. Twitter, and of course on YouTube. You can find Nick.
I'm on The Film Nick on Instagram and TikTok. It's also my letterbox as well, which is probably the thing I'm most active on, if I'm honest. If you want to see what I'm watching at the moment, kind of working my way through Sean Baker's movies. Guy that did Honora.
Yeah.
Really good.
Yeah.
Really good.
Okay. Thank you so much to Lily, who does our wonderful artwork. You are a goddess among the world, and we're so lucky you wanted to do that for us. Music by Melody Ray Griffith. And until next time, stay magical.